and the non-faith community, between atheism and secularism and believers. And now I think, first of all, the first stage is for all believers to get together and to battle for values of faith and harmony and compassion, because in a sense, we're in the same struggle that others are involved in. The same problems facing a Jewish educator, face a Catholic educator, face an Orthodox educator, face a Muslim educator. I spoke once to a good friend of mine who's a rabbi in Australia, and there was a conference of Catholic bishops across the street, and they discussed the exact same educational problems, because the real opponent at the moment is atheism. And therefore, I think religion at the moment is much more ripe for cooperating and for creating opportunities to work together to overcome hatred, much more so than in the past. And now if I go to the question Rabbi Lazar posed before, why do people act out of anti-Semitism? What's the motivation? So in one sense, it could be deep religious conviction. And there's no denying, as I said before, these absolute truths can create a good deal of conflict. But at the moment, it seems to me that most of the graffiti here and many other places, it's not coming from a deep religious motivation. It's coming from nihilism, despair, simply a wasted life. And therefore, providing meaning, as Rabbi Lazar said, providing meaning to life is the best way, in a sense, to combat anti-Semitism. But, and there is a but over here, religion creates group identity. A good deal of our group identity is religious and cultural, and religion and culture, certainly in Europe, are intertwined. You cannot separate religion and culture, and therefore religion creates, in a sense, a community of the other. There's the you, is your group, and the other. And in that regard, the person comes to graffiti, I'm sure he's not religious, but I am convinced that he's trying to attack the other. I think part of the role of religion now is to really overcome the sense of the other. Like I said before, we really are hand in hand facing a common opponent. So even though we certainly are very different culturally, and I think we should emphasize that, yes, Jews and Catholics and Romanian Orthodox and Muslims, each are a faith community and should be a faith community and should be separate communities. I think the moment we should really emphasize togetherness and to forget about the other. And I'll conclude the final point about Wiesel, though I think good deal has been mentioned. I think his greatness was, he took his experiences, and rather than becoming bitter or sinking into despair, he leveraged them into a calling. And with him, he leveraged his fate into a destiny, in Soloveitchian terms. And that's coming with the scars which he was scarred from, to take his experiences into a calling is a tremendous moral lesson and religious lesson. And secondly, he did not try to erase his particularism. He spoke about Africa, and he spoke about anti-Semitism in Bosnia, about ethnic cleansing in Bosnia and the like. But nevertheless, he did not try to blur the particularism. He remained a deep and proud Jew. In other words, I think the point is to retain your identity, but to be open to the fact that the other is not the other. Rather than you are you, but the other is not the other. I think those are the great lessons he taught us, that it's not either a universalism which has no distinctions, or particularism which doesn't recognize the other. So the ability to take your your particularism, and leverage it into a view that there are other such groups as well.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Lichtenstein. We would like now to ask Rabbi Schaffer, the rabbi of the Jewish communities in Romania, to speak maybe in Romanian, so there will be translation, so then some of the people here would understand. No, because there will be translation. Please.
În onoarea locului voi vorbi în românește, deși stăpânesc și engleza. Vă relata o întâmplare, s-a întâmplat doar ieri.
I would like to tell you a story which happened yesterday.
No, the day before yesterday. It was Simchat Torah. And there was a very high level, a fost Simchat Torah.
Turn to Romanian, please.
Dar a fost Simchat Torah și a avut loc o întâlnire la nivel foarte înalt la patriarhie.
We had a meeting at the Patriarch's office in Bucharest at a very high level.
Am fost în dubiu, ori să renunț la acea întâlnire, ori să renunț la Hacafot.
I was in doubt what to do, to renounce to that important meeting or to the Kafot.
Am luat decizia, nu a fost ușoară, să fiu la acea întâlnire.
It was not so easy, and I chose that meeting.
Cred că este o cale pentru toți.
I think there is one way for every one of us.
Dacă vom cumpăni nevoile noastre cu nevoile celor din jur,
If we are thinking about our own needs and the needs of the other people who surround us,
dacă vom ști să ținem un dialog deschis cu cei din jur,
if we will be able to keep an open dialogue with the other persons around us,
aceasta este cea mai bună cale pentru a aduce înțelegerea între oameni.
this would be the best way to bring along the understanding among the peoples.
A fost aici exprimări cum că Elie Wiesel ar fi luptat.
Some people told us here that Elie Wiesel had a fight.
Au fost cazuri în care răul a fost atât de april încât a fost nevoie chiar de o luptă.
There were cases when the bad things were degrading in such a manner that the fight was necessary.
Dar în cele mai multe cazuri
But in most of the cases,
a fost o răspândire de idei care a adus pacea.
it was a spreading of ideas that brought along the peace.
Și aceasta este, cred, lecția care trebuie urmată
And I think this is the lesson that we should follow,
și pe care o urmează comunitățile evreiești din România și Federația
and this is
Comunităților.
the lesson that our Jewish Federation here in Romania
O
is following.
direcție care este dată de domnul președinte Aurel Weiner
A direction that is given by our own president, Mr. Aurel Weiner,
și pe care noi cu toți aici o urmăm
and,
cu înțelegere și apreciere.
and we follow him with great understanding and with devotion.
Vă mulțumesc!
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We are privileged that we have with us another Sigeta here. But apart from that, Rabbi Yochanan Fried is one of the educators in Israel. He has the Better Rav Kook, which is a symbol in Israel and all over the world. The whole attitude of Rav Kook was tolerance and the dignity, the human dignity to every person in the world. And we would like now to ask Rabbi Fried to say a few words.
I want to surprise you because I want to speak in Hebrew. According to the big person that lived here and speak Hebrew, Elie Wiesel, his Hebrew was something unique, and therefore I want to speak in Hebrew and to say some words according to those thoughts that said before me. And first of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity and to thank you, all of the partners of this symposium. Because, excuse me?
Your English is great.
But Elie Wiesel Hebrew was great. So, Elie Wiesel היה איש חשוב מאוד. הוא לא רק היה תלמיד חכם, לא רק היה מנהיג. ברומנית ובאנגלית. אלי ויזל היה איש חשוב מאוד.
Elie Wiesel nu a fost doar un învățat talmudist, ci
איש חשוב מאוד בהנהגה ציבורית.
a fost foarte important în activitățile sale publice.
ואפשר לומר שהדבר המאפיין ביותר שלו היה שהוא ידע לבנות גשרים, bridges.
Și cea mai importantă caracteristică a lui a fost capacitatea de a clădi poduri.
הוא ידע לחבר בין העבר, ההווה והעתיד.
A știut să lege trecutul, prezentul și viitorul,
בין המסורת לבין המודרנה.
între tradiție și modernitate,
ידע לחבר בין חלקים שונים שבעם ישראל.
între părți diferite ale neamului Israel.
וכמו שנאמר כאן, ועל זה חשוב לדבר, היום בין העולם כולו. הוא ראה את העולם כולו כמשפחה.
Ha văzut întreaga lume ca pe o singură familie.
כיוון שהתחילו בסיפור תולדות העולם מבראשית, הפרק השני מספר על מבול.
Începutul a fost creația. Al doilea capitol este potopul.
ההתנהגות של האדם הראשון גירשה אותו מגן עדן.
Comportamentul primului om, lui Adam, a cauzat el să fie alungat din grădina Edenului.
אבל 10 דורות אחרי זה,
10 generații mai târziu,
הקדוש ברוך הוא, אלוקים טיפל בעולם באמצעות דבר נורא, מבול.
Atotputernicul a adus potopul.
והשאלה היא למה משתמשים כאן בסוג כזה של חינוך, וכאן בסוג כזה של חינוך.
De ce aici o astfel de reacție și aici o astfel de reacție?
הדבר המפתיע הוא שהקדוש ברוך הוא הבטיח שלא יהיה יותר מבול בעולם.
Și încă ceva, Atotputernicul a promis că nu va mai fi niciodată potop pe lumea aceasta.
מכיוון שהוא האמין באדם.
Deoarece a avut încredere în om. Atotputernicul are încredere în om.
והדרך היחידה להאמין באדם זה לחזק את הטוב ולהילחם ברע.
Și pentru ca această încredere să fie justificată, trebuie sprijinită partea bună și combătută partea cea mai puțin bună.
באנטישמיות אפשר להילחם על ידי לעשות דברים יותר טובים, כמו הדבר הזה שעושים עכשיו.
Antisemitismul poate fi combătut făcând lucruri mai bune, precum această întrunire de aici.
אם כל אחד ייקח לעצמו את השיעור הזה מהמבול, דרך אלי ויזל, לבנות קשרים,
Dacă fiecare își va lua această lecție de la potop până la Elivize, lecția de a clădi poduri,
כי אז השמש תזרח.
atunci va răsări soarele.
תודה רבה.
Mulțumesc!
I would like, because he's a very enough, Yochanan, he made the tefillah shacharit this morning. And he told us, because Aaron Frankel, and Rabbi Lazar, and Aviad, and many others are originally in our reporter from Makor Rishon, Ricky,
And Yossi also?
and Yossi. You have a majority here, you have 5 new citizens. So he told us the story and he started to cry during the tefillah. And I want you to share the story in Hebrew and translate to Romanian about your father and his story about Soviet. No, that's relevant.
זה קשה לחזור הרבה פעמים.
Okay.
Maybe later. Okay, maybe
But
later.
just to mention, nobody said it, that Yochanan Fried, Rabbi Fried, is the chief rabbi of March of the Living from the very first minute, 31 years already. Chief rabbi of March of the Living.
As we can say here, there are 2 parts in the world. The one who knows that they are from Siget and the one who will know that they are from Siget. Because if you look every place, you see Siget people in it.
Not so fast.
You have to open a special room to the citizens, the new citizens of
Yeah, okay. But now we are celebrating.
I insist, wait, because he doesn't want to tell you to the mayor. What he said this morning during the tefillah in Chikrai. His father left Siget 8 years ago.
80.
8 years ago, and he took a boat from Constanza to Palestine, to Jaffa. It took him 5 months. And eventually he reached the place, and then the British told them to go somewhere else. So really the story of the family of Rabbi Fried, this is the story of the Jewish people.
Thank you very much. We are celebrating here as well Elie Wiesel's 90th birthday, and I think that there's no one that is much appropriate to speak about Elie Wiesel as Dr. Yoel Rappel, who founded the Elie Wiesel Archives in Boston University. Please, Dr. Rappel.
We know all the secrets.
Yes, well, we are speaking about anti-Semitism. First of all, I would like to take you to, I think it's one of either the most, one of the most important speeches of Elie Wiesel. During his life, Elie Wiesel gave thousands of speeches, thousands. We collected the papers, all the papers from all different places in all over the world about his speeches. And one of his most important speeches, from his point of view, it was the most important, was the speech at the White House on April 1999. He was invited by President Clinton to give the speech of the second millennium, the conclusion of the second millennium. And the speech was on April 1999, and it's called the Paris of Indifference, which already Rabbi Aviad mentioned it already, the word indifference. Elie Wiesel used to say that indifference is the main problem of the society on the 20th century and mainly on the second millennium. And when he spoke about the indifference, he spoke what you said, the opposite of love is not hate, the opposite of nice is not ugly. That is all correct. But he said something else. He said that indifference is the source for all the problems of the human beings. He said that the indifference is the main reason for anti-Semitism. He said that if we will change our attitude and we will take care about everything and not to be indifferent, when we are seeing something, we have to take care about it. And Elie he gave some examples. And one of the examples, from his point of view, was the Holocaust. And he said what we said last year in our march, the anti-Semitism led to Auschwitz. And it led to Auschwitz because all the world were indifferent from the beginning of the Nazis' rule on 1931-32 in Germany. Nobody take care about it, nobody look what they are doing, and they continue step by step. What the mayor here did on Elie Wiesel house, when he removed all the anti-Semitic graffitis, immediately, this was the way of Elie Wiesel. This is the way of Elie Wiesel to fight against anti-Semitism. To fight, not to be indifferent. When you are seeing something which is anti-Semitic, fight against it. Fight. You have to fight because this is your duty as a human being in the world. And I think that maybe you don't know that this speech of Elie Wiesel, this is, he wrote 57 books and many of his speeches were published already. But this is the only speech of Elie Wiesel that is part of the American curriculum in all kinds of the American schools, all over the United States, in all the schools. Students must study his speech, The Parents of Indifference. It's part of the curriculum. And I think that what you did is part of what he said. We have to fight against indifference. We have to fight. When we see something, we have to do. And you are believe me, the excellent example for what he meant when he said we have to fight. So it's a very good reason that you got today, you received today, the diploma or whatever, the certificate as a fighter against indifference.